Hello and welcome everyone to Purrseverance by Feline Capital, your one-stop shop for everything startups. I'm your host, Devika, and today we are exploring a vision that's transforming the landscape of sustainability and vegan living. Our guest is none other than Vikas Garg. Vikas isn't just any entrepreneur. He is the visionary behind a company that's redefining how we think about our choices and their impact on the world today. With a mission to influence 1 billion people to make decisions that benefit everyone, his company has already touched millions of lives across 188 countries. Their platform isn't just a business. It's a community where vegan food, sustainable products, and impactful ideas marry each other. Vikas's journey has driven him from the world of finance headfirst into the running a company featuring on the Forbes Asia 100 to Watch list of 2023. Under his leadership, the company launched the world's first peer-to-peer marketplace for sustainability. It's a game changer, offering an avenue for over 200,000 businesses worldwide to embrace eco-friendly practices. Interesting fact, more than half of Vikas's team are women. We will talk more about that, but I'm super excited for this one. Vikas, welcome to Purrseverance.
Thank you very much, Devika. You gave an incredible introduction. I have to get on stage on Thursday to do like a 2-minute long pitch slam. I'm gonna copy what you said and just say that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's our mission, to make our guests feel like they're doing fantastic. But you are, because actually I wanted to ask you, and this is the question we start and we get in with, right? Is how are you feeling really?
I like to say that in between struggling and thriving, there's striving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably my modus operandi for the last 5-6 years. Building a company, doing anything, whether you're running like a spice stand in Rajasthan in India, or you're trying to start a technology business, is hard. Many of the same issues and struggles, whether you're a small business, big dreams, small dreams, whatever. But building a business has been really difficult. And 4 years now, it's been like the last 4 years especially has been an incredible grind that has tested all of my convictions, everything that I spent the first 15, 16 years of my life doing, thinking, oh, this is business. This is what business is all about. This is what people coming together and creating businesses is all about, was of course tested during COVID. And then a continuation of that coming out of COVID. So yeah, I mean, I'm very inspired by my team and the resilience of our colleagues. But like any other startup, we've gone through ups and downs and peaks and troughs. And every time we hit a new peak, we're like, wow, man, amazing. Imagine if it's like this for the next 12 months. And then we had to get a healthy dose of reality just a couple of weeks later. And then you got to figure out it really is a roller coaster. That's it's an immense gives you an immense learning and an appreciation for life and just how hard it is to create anything enduring. So yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every time I talk to entrepreneurs, I keep wondering why the hell are you doing this, even till today? But I'm sure there's more to it, and we will get to that. So Vikas, let's start with your journey. As a professional, you started with finance and none other than hedge funds. So what was the shift? Generally, you don't see this combination of a finance bro almost, moving into sustainability. So what was the reflection behind it, and why the dramatic shift?
So I spent my whole life from when we came to America. My father was very big on education, right? And so my brother and I both very proud products of the New York City public school system, which, take it or leave it, is not the best. It's not the worst. But we were very fortunate to have two parents at home that really reinforced education. And especially my father, who spent a lot of time one-on-one. He was effectively like my math tutor growing up, So before I could go out during the summertime and ride my bike around the neighborhood, I had to spend 2 hours in his office learning from Indian math textbooks. And that really prepared me from an education perspective. But the other thing that my parents did that in a way we sort of took for granted, and we didn't take it for granted, we they were definitely values that we embodied. They were a huge part of staying grounded to something when we moved to America. I was just a kid when we moved to America, but was the fact that my mom and dad raised my brother and I vegetarian. That was huge. And it was all about, respecting animals. It wasn't a conversation about the environment or health back then. It was just about respecting life. And so I grew up with these values. At the same time, I grew up in New York City, and as a young kid with not a lot of money, with really nothing, besides a subway card and a library card, but in this oyster of New York City where everything is so out there and it's all this giant meritocracy and everything is open for people to see, it was very easy to get kind of sucked into finance because, it's like, ooh, that's the way that you get, you look at those young guys wearing fancy ties and fancy suits and driving nice cars and dating beautiful women, and it was like, oh, okay, well that's what we want, right? And so from a very early age I dove right in. And New York is great because, again, if you push and push and push, you can get your foot in the door. So I got my foot in the door, into sort of my Wall Street career when I was just in high school, when I was 14 years old. And then I just kind of ran with it through my 20s, didn't really think about too much. And then beginning in 2008, I started to have kind of a whole bunch of things kind of go wrong at the same time. We had the 2008 global financial crisis, and I think Wall Street was definitely getting pinned down or blamed for that. And in many ways, people were right about many things, not right about everything. My mom and dad both got really sick sort of at the same time. My father with heart problems, heart disease, and he was a diabetic for a long time, and my mother with cancer. And I got a dog, and also all of these things, good things, bad things, all thrown into one. But the relationship with the dog gave me this newfound sense of sentience. And it's like, wow, how is this the most profound relationship I have? The most incredible relationship I ever had in my life was as an animal. There's no English. There's no everything we know about conversing, communicating, building these relationships and logic and all of this stuff that we think is important for human beings is somehow transcended with this relationship that we can have with an animal. My mom and dad getting sick, I started really thinking about health and why are two vegetarians that don't drink, don't smoke getting so sick. Started thinking about food, and a number of other things. And I was an animal lover, and so I became vegan. And that choice, which actually felt like a huge compromise and a sacrifice, ended up being this hugely inspiring, enabling thing, because every single day, everything that I did, from everything I consumed, from the drinks and the food that I was eating, to the clothing that I was buying, to the products that I put on my face, to the other things that I do, suddenly started to have this new filter, this new lens. So it was really interesting. It's my career was going this way, and then at the same time, my values and sort of sense of purpose was going like this. And it all came to a head in 2016. I have Donald Trump to thank for Abillion, because when he got elected, it made me it was the first time in my life I ever really started to look at social media. And it was that when I started to see, wow, it looks like, you mentioned finance bro. It's like finance bros had suddenly been replaced by tech bros who felt no responsibility for anything that they were building. And I think look at Twitter today. I mean, over the weekend we've seen that Elon Musk is endorsing anti-Semitism. And and we've built these crazy, crazy platforms that connect the world's people, but then they check all semblance of values, ethics, morality at the door. And then I started to think like, wow, wouldn't it be great if somebody could figure out how to use algorithms to actually create social benefit, to create impact, to create social good? And so I moved to Singapore 9 years ago to help run a hedge fund here. And then 2.5 years into that journey, I said, hey, right when Donald was elected, I said, hey, I'm going to go do something about this. And that was the beginning of Abillion, and it's been 6.5 years.
Wow, that is fantastic. What was the name of the dog who inspired your journey?
Wally.
Wally. Okay.
If you've seen the Disney Pixar film Wally,
Yes.
about the robot who, goes back to Earth to find the one living plant on Earth because we've junked it to death. Yeah, we happened to see that film that summer before we got the dog, and so it just stuck.
It fits so perfectly with your story as well. But that's really nice. And you said Wall Street at the age of 14. What were you doing?
Everything. Photocopies,
Wow.
taking guys' shoes downstairs to get shined, picking up lunch for people, reading research reports, getting on phone calls, calling lists of phone numbers for brokers to literally, cold calling, like what you see in the movies, cold calling potential clients to sell them, $10,000 worth of some stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all of the above. And man, mostly getting pizza, like lots of pizza for guys at lunchtime.
As long as you got your lunch sorted. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can actually visualize your journey very well. You should actually consider making it at least like a movie or an autobiography at some point.
Yeah.
But okay.
How to succeed in failing.
Yes, and I really like the demographic. I'm almost going to think about making it a diagram where you said like when life is almost like this, your values sort of offshoot from there, and I think that's a very interesting way of visualizing it. But let's talk about your goal, right? A billion people. Now, as a founder, my whole point of starting Feline Capital was there were a lot of questions that many people didn't have answers for as aspiring entrepreneurs, right? And so one of the questions that I have on a day-to-day basis is you're almost scared to make ambitious claims of what you want to achieve because of the fear of like achieve it, because your reality at the moment could be very different. So how do you look at that and how do you compare it to a billion people without getting bogged down by the pressure of it every single day?
A billion people is such an abstract number, right? It's so there's no like we're this is a billion. It's 10 to the ninth, right? And that's the logo of our company, 10 to the ninth. But if you just cover that up for a second, this is what we started with. Actually, we started with just this one, and then we were like, oh, now we have 10 users, and now we're 10 to the seventh, which is 10 million. So I guess, if you go 10 to 1, so we're 10 to the seventh, we're more than halfway there. No, we have 990 million people to go. But it's taken us 6 years to get this far. I wish I could tell you that, oh yeah, I mean, like that very first financial model that I built, that's how it all worked out. Now when potential investors ask me like for a revenue model or a financial model, forecasting, or a growth model, I just I'm like, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is like, that's a bunch of bullshit, right? Two, it's like, okay, sure. The one thing that it is very useful for is always checking your hypothesis. Like, okay, I'm going to build this and I think that this is going to help me get this far or do this. And it helps you to kind of calibrate and recalibrate some of your decision making and thinking. But it's impossible to predict. This year we've had enormous growth, and we weren't really sure how 2020, we weren't sure how COVID was going to go. We didn't 2023 and 2024, or 2022 and 2023 have been an utter mess as a company trying to kind of get to the next stage. But then 2023 has been our best year of growth ever. So, but who knows, right? It's incredibly volatile. Or sometimes it just stalls. But yeah, look, I think the question, right, for any founder is like the goal. The idea is to also partly by having the goal out there. Like in our case, it's not like, oh, we want $1 billion valuation, or oh, we want 1 billion users. No, we're not looking for 1 billion users. We're looking to have helped 1 billion people. Right? So there's going to be a lot of companies that are also part of this mission that are also going to have to succeed. And there's going to be a lot of nonprofits, and there's going to be a lot of people talking about the ideals, the ideas, right? It's not just going to be us. And so that's a movement. A movement is every individual in that movement playing a big part in getting that movement to the next step, right? It's not about me. It's not about 1 billion as a company. It's about everyone there getting there to the field, getting there to create that movement, right? And one person less, and so that and you're always that's what it's all about. And for us, it's all about inspiring people, right? So I think one of the nice things is when we do that, right, we're giving people a sense of like, hey, we're trying to build this community, we're trying to create impact, we're trying to get people to convert. And that's what gets people excited, is they get brought into the mission, right? We have not spent very much money as a business marketing. We have really leaned in on the mission. We have not, as a company, spent very much at all on paying influencers to talk about us. We generally find that all of that is completely useless. Maybe it's just because our product is crappy. I don't know. Like it's not at the stage where it can sell itself, so we can just throw money at an influencer and then people just start going. I just don't think that the world reacts that way. I think there's so much money wasted. But so what we do is we lean in and we work with nonprofits around the world, and we make our mission really clean, and we try to align ourselves there so we can bring people on board who also then are very much connected to the mission. And then we design the user experience in a way that everything that they create has the ability to then spawn and actually get in front of somebody who may not be kind of at that same level in terms of participation, but might be interested. And then how do you get them to sort of take part and sort of eventually be part of the movement, right? So yeah, I'm a big fan of putting your goals out there, right? I frankly think that not every startup can, because not every startup is altruistic or sort of purpose driven.
Okay. And you touched on two very important aspects that I wanted to talk to you about today. One was the marketing, and one was the community. So I was we were talking about CrossFit the other day, and how, the whole CrossFit phenomenon became like a community phenomenon globally.
Sure, yeah.
Right. And the ecosystem almost feeds itself. It's self-sustainable.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah. And so I was just reading about it, and I just found it to be so interesting. And now when you're trying to connect the dots backwards, sure, there's a lot of theories that people talk about and frameworks, but I'm pretty sure that's not how it went down when it happened, right? And so when you talk about community, and you say you didn't have a lot of marketing burn, right? So how did you make sure that your community sort of, because I was on the platform, and in fact, I was so surprised to see food even being sold here. Like there was vegan pizzas, and dumplings, and there was very cute little pillow covers, and quite a few options actually, which I'm very surprised about. And so how do you make sure that the community sustains? Is it the people that are part of the community who are very passionate, or do you guys do something specific to bring out that sense in them?
So we have this incredibly altruistic community. And I think it stems from, so what you see on the platform ultimately is you see active user engagement, right? Like you're seeing content.
Yes.
So 99% of people on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter never create content or don't do it on a frequent basis. Like you're not gonna, when you go on Twitter, when you go on any of these platforms, you see 1% of the people who create all of the content, right? On our platform, it's a little different. But the concept is similar, but like on our platform, about 12-ish% of users actually create content, right? That number doesn't matter so much. Then what's interesting is, right, is how do you use that content to effectuate behavior? So we are all about behavior change. We're in the business of behavior change, right? And it's kind of like I don't have a straw sitting here on my desk, but it's kind of like the straw, right? Some 11-year-old kid just came up with a statistic that became the like commonly accepted thing all around the world. And there's a whole movement of people with now businesses to like get rid of the plastic straw and have that. And we all know the truth of the matter is if you could take all the straws in the world right now, all the plastic straws, and you throw them all in the ocean, and it doesn't matter. It's such a tiny drop in the bucket of all the plastic in the ocean. Most of the plastic in the ocean comes from fishing. Right? So if you want to save the ocean and you want to get rid of plastic in the ocean, guess what? Eat less fish. Right?
Yeah.
But the straw is an amazing, if you isolate the straw's impact purely from the perspective of the plastic, you'd be missing out on the much bigger picture, which is that act of swapping out your straw creates a connection, creates community, it really does. It creates a sense of being part of something. It creates a sense of participation, agency, gives people agency over this climate problem, right? And that's something that's really important. It gives people a sense of purpose. It gives people a small sense of accomplishment. And then it percolates into all the other things, for example, plastic bags and how they travel, like just because it creates that little feel-good factor. Just like when you work out in the morning, the rest of your day is going to be a lot better. It's sort of the same thing, right? And this is what we are trying to do, is create this sort of movement where content creators, the content that they're creating is actually allowing people to have the same kind of experience through a digital platform. And then how do you carry that over into a physical, into sort of a physical act, whether it's the next food purchase I make or the next cosmetics product I buy or or my relationships, etc. And so creating content on our platform gives people a lot of agency, and it also makes them feel very important and special, important in the right ways, but special in the sense that they know that the content that they're creating on Abillion is having a lasting impact on the ecosystem. And that's been why our group of content creators around the world has been so sticky over the years. And also we've aligned with about 100 nonprofits around the world. And so a lot of our core like the user base that are content creators keep coming back over and over and over again, thanks to our partnerships with nonprofits that they're very passionate about.
Very, very interesting. And so how do you enable, just a little bit to dive in deeper, how do you enable discoverability? Because for me, I discovered your platform via an article that Forbes wrote, right? But if, let's say, I am a person who wants to be a part of this community, how do you ensure that Abillion reaches me? What are your...
So we definitely could be doing so much more.
Okay.
And that's maybe where the influencers like, oh, it'd be wonderful if, if Tom Brady and Gisele Bundchen, who are trying to be vegan, started, oh, I'm using Abillion. Oh, God, you guys gotta check this out. Find me on Abillion. That day, hopefully that day will come. Hopefully.
Okay.
Right. The question is do we need that day to come? Or do we just need to, like, what's more important, getting Tom Brady on board or getting 1 million people on board to try to start living this lifestyle? Right. I could care less about getting Tom Brady on board if it means I can get another 1 million people to start trying to live more sustainably. right? So we got to figure out how we do that. But this particular lifestyle of values, the ideology and the values of nonviolence, of sustainability, ultimately, what is sustainability? What does sustainability mean to you? I give this presentation a lot. In 10 minutes, I have 10 slides, and it leans in with this question: what does sustainability mean to you? And depending on who you're talking to, the answer could be very different, right? An economist will answer that question differently than a marine biologist and everybody else in between, right? A poor person will answer it differently than a rich person, et cetera, right? But one common thread that sustainability has is that it's ultimately about all the things that we consume, right? Because of our consumption and our desire to consume, our need to consume as human beings every single day, we are causing some of these imbalances.
Right.
And if we are to change these imbalances for the better, we need to consume better. And that's where we start. So intrinsically, sustainability is about finding better products, making better decisions, purchasing decisions, etc. Okay, well, what fits in there? When people buy stuff, they look at reviews. They want to see what other people are saying. They want to search for products. Sometimes you might see a product and you're like, is this good? I don't know. It costs $100, but I don't know anything about it. It's making all these claims on the packaging. Let me Google it. So boom, 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 right? So this is like, how do you become the place that fits into that action? And that's what we've really leaned into over the last couple of years, really this last 2 years, is how do we become the reference point? We now have 3 million consumer reviews, all with photos and videos of 600,000 products across 100,000 brands. We had 125,000 restaurants on our platform. And we've structured our data so platforms like Google, which control 90% of search traffic globally, start to show us off to their users.
Right.
And then eventually those people then become our users. So instead of spending money on marketing, we have engineers spending time on things like search engine optimization. It doesn't really cost us a thing besides, our paying our talent.
Right.
But the results are far better. Today, Google is putting us on page 1 of search results over 1 million times every day for products, restaurants, etc.
I see.
And so, and that number by the end of next year might be 3 million times a day. So that's really how we become, as you say, found. How do people find us? Then the stuff like the Forbes articles, they help.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But we can't predict when that's going to happen,
That's true.
Yeah.
We
don't have any money to pay for PR.
That was a great move, actually. Are you proud of yourself with the whole Forbes thing happening?
It was a surprise. It was a really, really nice surprise. It was a really nice surprise, and it caught me in the middle of an otherwise a really hard week. So that was nice.
Yeah.
But like everything, it's also short-lived. Because it doesn't mean anything, right? It's like all those things, right? Like the awards and all of that's all really nice. It's great recognition. But the thing that matters is, how do we make our business sustainable? How do we make our business financially sustainable so we can get to the next stage? How do we make our business rock solid so we can show the world that doing good can be profitable?
Yeah.
And and that ultimately then gets that ultimately is I think that's impact. If we want to show the world that, hey, investing in impact is a good thing, we got to figure out how to make our business, how do you make a business profitable, financially sustainable, so other people look at it, other entrepreneurs say, oh, wow, I want to do that too, right? Because the world needs so many more solutions like this, and that investors wake up and say, oh wow, there is money to be made in this, I want to do that too, right?
Yeah, I agree, because I mean, I spoke to a couple of students here and I asked them, like, what do you think about sustainability? Because we were talking about ESG and sustainability, and there was this particular student, she was so passionate about it, and she's like, but I want to make money. And that's the general perception towards sustainability, is that sustainability is not equal to money. Sustainability is equal to probably wearing the same t-shirt for the entire week and then pitching to founders. So I think that's going to be a very interesting shift to see. But the other thing I wanted to ask about, you talk about a lot of like the heart of entrepreneurship, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like? What are you tackling on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Just just to address before we get into that, your student is there's plenty of billionaires that are recycling billionaires in the world. So
Yeah.
recycling inherently is a sustainable
Sustainable
activity.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah. And look at Elon Musk. You know, he's saving all of this fuel so he can burn it, sending rockets into space that
Yeah.
nobody actually needs.
Needs.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I have very
right.
specific opinions about Elon Musk, but yeah, I agree.
He's an incredible entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Um, so on um on your on your point. Sorry, what remind me the question on what is it like? It's what is it like on a hard day or
Yeah,
sorry?
because I mean, you've touched upon the hearts a couple of times. So I just want to know, what are you like juggling on a day-to-day basis as a founder?
Okay, yeah. So look, I think the thing is with a business, right, or like a business like ours, we intentionally spent the first few years focused on building a business where the key metrics were not revenue, profitability. It was around, hey, we're creating this content factory.
Mm,
And so it's user generated content. It's getting people to sign up. It's getting those people to go through a funnel. It's creating a great first user experience. It's getting that massive user generated content and the interest and all of that in it, getting all of that going,
mm,
right?
mm.
So that was the first few years.
Okay.
Sounds great, but then you also build a culture around all of those things. You build an internal culture around all of those things, and those metrics. Then when you try to, okay, hey, now we're ready to commercialize the business. Which, look, this is I think this part is pretty normal. Like anytime you're building these kinds of platforms, you need to get this kind of critical scale before you can say, hey, okay, I'm going to commercialize this, right? Or at least, look, that for better or worse, that's the bet that we made,
Mm.
right? I wish I could tell you that I could have, you know what? I probably could have commercialized it from day one.
Yeah.
I'm just not that smart, or I wasn't thinking that way.
Right.
But so I made that decision, right? And then so when we get to the stage when we want to commercialize the business, now we've got to start thinking differently.
Mm.
And it's that adaptability, right? Sometimes even as a founder, you're just like, cool, I'm there.
Yeah.
But wait, the rest of your team is not there,
Mm.
right? And everything else is not there. Your community, your user base is not there.
Yeah.
Like just because you can't just roll out a new feature and then boom. So what's interesting is this concept of product market fit is like at least in our case has been like literally you achieve product market fit on one thing and then suddenly everything changes, or you now need to achieve product market fit on something new. So there's product market fit on the core user experience, then there's product market fit on the commercial side. It's taken us almost 2 years to finally get to a stage where on the commercial side, the conversations, the revenue, the product, people are starting to like clue in. They're starting to get more engaged in the conversations and see the value on the commercial side themselves.
Mm.
Right. But that's taken time. We need to build a product, we start talking to people about it, start trying to even just get people to start using it, then start trying to get them to start paying for it, then taking all the bad feedback about how they were unhappy about what they're paying for and try to turn that into, okay, well, how do we get, and at the same time working through, wow, sales cycles, and how do you reduce that and compress that? So I think that that's the thing, is how do you balance all of that? And then um as the leader, you have to accept that there's a very high degree of context switching in your life all the time. Like, I'm constantly going from thinking about one thing to the other, thinking about the connections between them. But for your team, that can often be really challenging.
Yes.
So like, engineers need to be given fairly specific, like, engineers need to be able to do what their jobs are.
Yeah.
It's harder for them to deal with a lot of ambiguity, right? And business people need to have a product where the pitch can be straightforward enough. And so I think that that's, it's all amazing if you're up for it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And you try to keep an open and positive outlook and mindset about it.
I think that's
Otherwise, it will tear you down, rip you apart, and spit you out the other side.
Yeah. So I've worked with a co-founder like that who kept pivoting on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, that's bad too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The most nightmarish experience ever.
Why was this person pivoting on a daily basis? Like, what was going on there?
Data sets, like today I'm looking at data by Statista, and then tomorrow I'm looking at data by Pew Research. And then my friends told me a feedback about this particular company. And so there was constantly this pivot, and almost felt like there was a lack of vision, because the vision kept changing on a day-to-day, the business model kept changing on a day-to-day basis. And so like that can be terrible for a team.
Yeah, it can. Look, yeah, I would say that on my side. So I just shared recently, like, I think early last week, I shared the very first deck that we created, that we ever showed an investor back in April of 2018, so 5 years ago. And I was like, look at this. It's like we stuck to, like, we literally have achieved everything that we said that we would here. Like, everything that we wanted to build, everything that we wanted to do, we've now done. Now we just need to grow it and continue to make it stronger and better and grow it. But we've really stuck to our knitting. But hell, it doesn't feel that way for a lot of people, and this is the part where sometimes there's like things in someone's head, but they don't communicate. I think we see this with everyone, right? You see this with children, you see this with parents, you see this with it's like, just because you said something once doesn't mean like anybody was listening or paid attention or even remembers.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault.
Yeah.
And the sooner you accept that in life, to stop blaming people for not listening, not hearing, not showing up to the meeting, not reading the email, not understanding what you said at the Monday morning meeting about your vision and all of this, and you just accept that you need to constantly be not reminding them, because if you do that, you're going to be an asshole, but that you need to constantly, in a way, be advocating for what you're trying to do, evangelizing. Then you have I have found that I have a better shot when you constantly need to be selling your vision to your team. Yeah. And then also, like, look, you've got this vision of like, okay, wow, I want to get 1 billion people to be vegan. Well, how do you get there? That's the part maybe you got to be open-minded about.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the interest of, I had like over 20 questions, but in the interest of time, I want to check with you a little bit about the technicalities, because I think this will help a lot of people, is especially with your finance background, right? What are some tips about running the finances of a startups? Because we know enough number of startups who've expanded too soon, who've burnt their money too soon, who've had too many partnerships too soon. So what are the key things that I must keep in mind about my finances when I'm running a startup?
It's one of the smartest things that I heard recently was I'm reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
That was recommended. It's like a classic on personal finances, but I never read it.
Mhm.
And there's so much wisdom in that book. But one of the things he says that I found, like, when I first read it off the page, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, but it's so counterintuitive. It's like, in fact, so different than what you actually hear, is that your investors will appreciate when you are spending less of their money and hiring less, and making sure to keep your overhead in line. And the funny thing about venture and building businesses is so much of that initial, you start with nothing, then all of a sudden it becomes this race to like prove that you're like a company, and that like you need all these people. Like, oh yeah, you should have an office, and you should have all these people in your office, and you should have all these, like, you need managers, and the managers need to have all these people, and you have two people in case like one of them decides to go on vacation. So it's really tempting, especially for people who come from these big institutions, which have, companies that have 5,000 people and 10,000 people, right? It's very, very tempting to think that that's what success is. But you can really very quickly let the expense side get the better of you. We've reduced our burn 90% from the peak. Like in October of 2023, we spent 90% less than what we spent in our peak month in the beginning of 2022. And overall, we've reduced our expenses by 2/3 from 2023 to 2020. From 2022 to 2023, our expenses this year are a third of what they were in 2022. Meanwhile, our growth is 10 times higher, right? Growth where it matters, the revenue is already triple what it was in 2022, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the thing. It's like when your CTO tells you your CTO that you hired from, a big company tells you he needs this, and this, and this, the first mistake you made was you hired and gave somebody the title of CTO. The second mistake you made was, like, not, just believing. And you want to believe because you want to give people agency. That's the other thing, right? As a startup founder, you have an idea, but you have very little idea of how it's going to work out, how you're going to have to execute. So you try to hire people who seem to be very good at a specific thing. And then they give you recommendations. And if you don't follow their recommendations, then you feel two things. You feel like, oh, I'm basically not listening to these smart people that, and then I'm micromanaging and this and that, right? And so you go along with it only to realize that, in fact, it's so easy to like waste money. So easy to waste money.
Yes. Okay, that's interesting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, in the last section before we go to our final rapid fire, was about sustainability, right? Because this all goes back to the core idea of it. What do you think is where do you think sustainability is heading at this point? And where do you think it should be heading? Because I'm pretty sure, like, okay, I am not a sustainability fanatic, but if given the opportunity to be able to be a part of it, I think I would. So like, what are we looking at for the next couple of years?
It's really interesting. I think that in every industry that touches the consumer, we're looking at it. At the same time, I think companies are thinking about how do they reposition themselves in a way where they're saving money or making more money, which is, both effectively do the same thing. And they're able to position themselves. By doing that, they're able to position themselves also as being more sustainable. Like one really simple example, right? Which is like plastic water bottles.
Yeah.
right? Or is a, you know, you go to a hotel room and they would have all these water bottles and, you know, you chuck them and whatever. Now, you know, now they put like glass water bottles. There's like so many easy ways to be sustainable and save on your bottom line, right? And I think that is that's where we're going, right? Is businesses don't have to make investments, they just need to stop wasting so much. They can reduce their waste, increase their bottom line, and also feel good about it and have their customers feel good about it,
Mm.
right?
Right.
Two is, I think there's a real desire from consumers about authenticity,
Mm.
right? And so if you're, you know, again, sustainability means lots of different things to lots of different people. But again, it's like if you can improve the way you do things to make yourself more of an advocate for consumers, consumers appreciate that. I'll give you one example. CVS, which is the one of the largest, if not the largest, pharmacy chain in America. It's where people buy their shampoo and they buy their drugs and everything, even food. But whenever you go to, you know, 10 years ago, if you used to go to a CVS or any pharmacy while you're waiting in line for 10 minutes to, you know, buy your items, you're staring at a wall of cigarettes behind the cash register, right? And that's there for a reason.
Mm.
That, and they know you're going to stare at a wall of cigarettes and candy underneath that for 10 minutes. And so that company and their board were confronted with the logic of like, hey, our mission, our motto is to like make Americans healthier. We go and you stare at a wall of cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
And we make $2 billion a year from selling cigarettes. What are we going to do about it? We can't just turn that off. But
Yeah.
they did. And they thought that it would be a massive hit to their share price. It ended up being a massive win. Their share price went up. Moms around America are talking about it. You know, people felt like, wow, I'm going to support this company because this company's standing for the right thing. So I
Mm.
think that that's kind of the direction that sustainability is going.
Right.
Right, is empowering consumers and empowering businesses in the right way. Sustainability can mean a lot of different things to people. And you know, and it also cannot be like, it cannot be, there can't be like some standard that is expected of all people to sign up to. And you know, and that's why climate accords and all these things don't work, because what's happening in India and China and Bolivia is very different for very different reasons, right? And you know, and so we kind of, I think that I think that the future of sustainability, and I say this a lot, is from going back to an Abillion lens, is that you've got these 17 sustainability development goals that the United Nations created. There's one common thread, one solution that can tackle every single one of these, everything from food inequity, the fact that we have 1 billion people that eat too much, and we have 1 billion people that are not going to eat at all today, right? The fact that, you know, why do these inequities exist? The fact that we're the largest source of deforestation globally is actually animal agriculture. We can put an end to all of this just by reducing our meat consumption and looking at what's on our plate. And so that's where we're focused, right? Is how do we get people to eat healthier, be healthier, feel more connected,
Mm.
right? And make simple choices that have a massive impact on the entire globe, the entire ecosystem, our biodiversity, and our sustainability and longevity. So that's why we're doing what we're doing, trying to help people change the way they eat.
Hey, thank you so much for that. That was great. I mean, I could listen to you talk about sustainability all day long because I think there's so much.
Yeah.
I think it, I don't know if the right thing would be to say that we don't have time to think about it, but I just think it's not a priority for a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
Which is odd when it actually could be much more simpler.
Well, what are your priorities, right? Your priorities are health and financial savings and, you know, and all of these things, and actually consumption, how we consume. Imagine if the simple act of what we put on our plate can make us feel better, can make us live longer, The average American spends a third, the average American family of four spends a third of their take-home pay on healthcare. And that's not preventative, that's medicating symptoms. Imagine if you can wipe that out, people would be saving more, people would be able to buy a nicer home in a nicer neighborhood, send their kids to a better school in a better school district. There's just so many knock-on effects.
Right.
And we'd be able to have more food. We don't need to grow more food to feed the planet. So
how do you suggest
that's the thing.
Because you see, like, this can be very overwhelming very easily, right? Like, how do you start small?
How do you start small? Swap out your breakfast, swap out dairy. That's probably the easiest way for anybody to start. Is, I mean, just the notion that we're the only animal, the only mammal on Earth that drinks the mammary fluid, the breast milk of another animal is just, it's ridiculous. It's preposterous. Steve Jobs said it best. You know, Steve Jobs used to talk about marketing all the time, and he said that marketing was all about getting people to align with your vision and your values, not your product. If you sell your vision and values and you get people, you know, your product could suck and people will still buy it. And he was vegan, but he also said that the greatest marketing campaign in the history of mankind was milk, because it was the biggest scam ever perpetuated on the consumer. It was an absolutely useless product. So the good news is today, you know, milk has a lot of saturated fat, has a lot of cholesterol. It's not really good for anything. It's not a good source of protein. It's not a good source of calcium. It's all just kind of a scam. Yeah. And the alternatives are also not only equivalent, but in many cases so much better. So yeah, I would start there. That's one simple thing.
Okay.
Another simple thing is, next time you go to a store and you want a bag, you want a shirt, you want a skirt, just walk out this, just picture yourself not buying it, not giving in to your impulses, and walking out of the store and see what makes you feel better. Having the strength to not buy that item, or buying it and then feeling bad about the fact that you just bought another thing you didn't need.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely going to be practicing your willpower. There's nothing that makes you feel better than that.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Because I think we've covered a little bit of it. We had a lot more questions, but I think we'll keep it for maybe your next Forbes list. So let's do a quick rapid fire about Abillion. Okay. The answer should be about 20 to 30 seconds and as quick as possible. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Oh, what is Abillion?
We are a social media platform and a consumer review platform focused on the global vegan community.
What does Abillion do that no one else is doing?
We bring in a very fragmented consumer market together, people who are interested in vegan options. Often you're the only one in your community. And yet that is a very powerful consumer. We bring those consumers together all around the world in 188 markets into this digital community that makes them feel more connected and makes them feel more looked after, taken care of, and we really give them a voice.
Who is Abillion for?
Abillion is for anyone. Our community is 80% women, ages 15 to 40. 65% of our users are actually meat eaters. They're not vegans. Only 25% or so of our community are vegans. And our product is being used in over 188 countries around the world. So if you're interested in healthy food, if you're interested in living more green, if you're interested in improving your consumption and reducing your harm to to nature and our biodiversity, Abillion is for you.
And why the name Abillion?
Because we want to help 1 billion people live more sustainably. We want to help 1 billion people save the planet.
And finally, what is your vision for Abillion?
1 billion people to saving the planet, 1 billion people thinking and acting more consciously, and making that something that's easy, accessible, fun, and second nature for everyone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Vikas. It was lovely talking to you. This conversation was very, very, it made me reflect on a lot of the things I do. I was thinking about how I cook, how much oil I use as we spoke as well. But yeah, thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure our audience is going to appreciate whatever you shared with us today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Viveka. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.